All right. Call the meeting to order. Welcome one, welcome all.
Thank you.
We've got meeting minutes September 4th and September 25th. Anybody wants to venture a motion on those?
Make a motion to pass.
Okay, then that's a second by Joyce. Motion by Farrell. All in favor, raise your hand. Anybody signed up for public session?
Should have put out your logo on your agenda backwards. Sure.
We have a logo on our box. We sure do, don't we?
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Not how you did that.
Okay, everybody turn around.
That's a good one.
You can't read clean off?
Farrell, tell us about Whitmire.
All right, Whitmire property, we have completed the asbestos remediation project. Talked with contractors this morning, they will be doing up the final report. They'll send it to our attorney, I told them to send it to John's attention. We'll go over it to make sure everything's okay and it meets the guidelines so we can apply for a second demolition for the fire department on it. The one item that's still outstanding is we still have 27 skids of North Carolina native field stuff. I did make some contacts. I think Burton's made some contacts, but we only got about $1,200. About the highest we got. If anybody was interested, my recommendation would be that we offer those skids to the public at $100 a skid. They don't have to load them themselves. That's one reason we haven't been able to move them, is because the town doesn't have anything in town right now to do it. We'll have to wait, what, a couple of months on a contractor that's going to be in here. Well, that great one. Yeah, I know about that. But that's what my recommendation would be. I think we all just post it, put it in the paper, whatever, and that if any of the public would like to get it, they can come by, pay $100 for a skid, then we'll
Don't you think you opened up for a lot of folks over there handling a lot of rock on town property and throwing it back out or something? I mean, I tell you what.
Well, regardless, they're gonna have to have it.
Well, you know, if somebody buys it bulk with a forklift or something and just gets it out of there, there'd be a whole lot less
Are there
chance.
any projects that the town's contemplating?
We've got a contractor come in that they'll have a piece of equipment for the jail.
You know, there are a lot of people that know new equipment stuff.
Yeah, I know what I think we ought to offer.
Make them sign it, can they, as the lawyers, can they make them sign a disclaimer or something before they go out?
I think sometimes we're too.
And then, is that copper still all around there? They're doing that, like,
Everything's
so.
stolen.
Everything's been
Everything's been taken with exception of the rock.
Bill, like I say, is there any project that the town's contemplating we could use the rock for? Anything for the JC Park or anything like that?
Is there enough to rent this JC Park if the?
Are there any layers? I mean, we have to sell them.
We've got to move them.
Oh, you got to move them?
We've got to move them.
Oh,
We can't burn structure them there, so.
Oh, they're still at the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to move them. We have to buy a piece of equipment that can actually lift.
So there's not a wholesaler or
No.
that would.
Well, $1,200.
You know, our son worked for and they're doing
Well, so they got the equipment from the, that's that equipment. Well, easy.
I mean, I think I like that.
Put it out there and see.
You'd be surprised how quickly you
Well, I think we pretty much probably all would agree that we could get rid of them that way. The question is, how do we get the rock to them or on something without a piece of equipment to load the entire skid? Now, the skids are on wooden skids and they've got wire baskets around them. So in other words,
They weigh about-
it's probably
how
gonna
much
stay
skid?
intact.
About how much?
3,500 pounds. Ton to ton and a half, so somewhere that. That's what they weigh where I priced them in other places.
But if we put it out there and say, public, they have to get it.
We'd have to have
That's what we're
somebody-
talking about, but we're also talking about the liability on town.
We'd have to have
property.
somebody controlling who's coming to get it.
Well,
Yeah.
that's not
Well,
an issue.
I guess the thing about it is, I would rather, if we could take them somewhere else, I don't know that I want people running around the country, my property. I mean, it's not a real good place.
Well, we would have to establish dates, that they would have to come up there with it.
Now you're talking, Farrell, if we had it on such, put the word out on such and such a day, where it could be under control, they could sign some little waiver or something, yeah, and let them all, that would make more
Yeah.
sense than just,
I don't think we
One
can
day
just let
one
them go
person,
up
one
there.
day another person.
yeah,
They
yeah.
can go out just when they wanted to, it has to be a designated time.
Plus, if somebody's there on site.
And how many pallets on?
There's 27.
There's somewhere that's already got some.
Okay. I think there's 27.
So, one point there was 32.
And then funny how,
Yeah. 27 one of them over there.
and it may be less the next stuff. Every
Uh,
place is going.
I've been there 4 times and there's been 27.
Is there a motion to give Farrell authority to go ahead and move forward with that on the plan of setting up a date certain, so that people can come and get it at $100 a pallet? We're not talking about utilizing a lot of town people already, we're not gonna load it or anything.
No.
Will somebody be over there and get some type of a waiver signed if they're gonna be on the premises handling?
We would have to, we've got pictures of it, so we would have to do a kind of an advertising, to let people know if they're interested, to work up some way for them to come by the town office here and, pay for a skid, and then have a slip of paper, and then when they come over there, then the slip of paper is.
Well, Sam, this being under 5,000, would it just be surplus to your discretion?
I think the key thing is that the board would consent to the whole project per se.
So general consent, I don't, we're probably don't have to vote on it because it's in the discretion of the town to surplus something that if it.
I think it's a good idea for Farrell to head it up.
The only question I have is, how are we gonna advertise? Will we advertise?
I would say do it on our website, put it in the Franklin Press, and, make it news in the WR.
We might get some out of Islands too.
Well, I contacted people, and I couldn't get anybody to even come.
When probably, we talking, when did that house get burned?
Well, I think the fire department wants to, do some training on it to start with, and then we'll have to set dates, and we'll have to apply for new permits and notifications. You gotta notify everybody in the world when you do it to a public.
It'll be a next year sometime.
Probably, I'd say, what, we wanna do it next spring, maybe?
Early spring.
Early spring, so we got plenty of time to do it.
Do we need to take any formal action on that?
That would suffice, and we'll just keep everybody informed by email
Okay.
or snow signal.
And we'll work on it with John Jimmy, we'll work out something that we can get on the sign, they're gonna take on the property, and we'll set up some dates for them. I can work on that.
That's good work, we appreciate it.
So, yeah.
Any more on that? Reappointment of Deb Pendle to the Tourism Development PDA Board. Who's her surrogate here?
I can touch on that if you'd like.
Yeah.
Deb's term is for reappointment. Her term expires December 2012. She's expressed an interest in continuing her term, which that would be till December 2015.
And she's a good active member.
Glad to have her.
People lined up to jump in there.
Not necessarily right now. But we're working on it.
Motion to that effect? So moved. Any discussion, all in favor, raise your hand. Sam, the speed limit policy.
Well, we've got 2 issues. What I'd like to run them by the board to see if the board is interested in acting on them, in which case I'd ask the board to authorize the streets committee to start working on them. It'll probably take a while to put together. The first one is on the speed limits in town. The old ordinance for the town specified that in general, the speed was to be set, unless otherwise posted, at 35 miles an hour. And then, of course, I think all of you have the attachment that shows where the changes or the alternates are. Some 20 miles an hour, some 25, some 45. What we were suggesting to do to minimize confusion about the speed limits is to be able to eliminate all the 35 postings in town. And the way to do that is to come to the town limits and post a sign saying that unless otherwise posted, the speed limit throughout town is 35 miles an hour. That way we don't have to post individual 35-mile-an-hour signs all through town. They're rather haphazardly scattered about anyway, just by a survey. The advantage to the town, of course, is some clarity, but it would require modifying the ordinance to reflect that the primary entrance ways into town would have that posted. And we don't have that yet currently. It's essentially saying the same thing that the town has already adopted, but in a way that would allow you to get rid of all the 35-mile-an-hour signs in town and just put marking. Corollary to that, there are also some of the existing, other than 35-mile-an-hour postings, that would warrant looking at. The DOT has suggested it in some areas. And while I'm talking about that, also the DOT is in the process of reposting the Depot Street extension back to 45, which this board requested. I want to say it was in 2010. Since the project is now finished up, at least out to the village straighter, there will be reposting those to 45 miles an hour. Give you an example of a street that appears that it would warrant a closer examination. That's Back Street. You can find, I think, 2 20-mile-an-hour postings on Back Street from in front of the firehouse all the way up to just past Patton Avenue where it turns back into 35. I don't know of anybody that drives 20 miles an hour through there.
I do, everybody does.
And then some, and then some.
But in reality, the street itself and the DOT has suggested looking at that in terms of moving. There is no real impediment. Most of the traffic runs, according to their measurements, between 30 and 37 miles an hour.
Where is the genesis for this? Where did this idea, why are we talking about this tonight?
Well, we were looking at a budget item to start replacing traffic signs, like mileage posting signs within town, because there's a number of them that are rusted and bent, or whatever. And just to save the cost, it just came up as an idea, well, we don't have to post all these 35-mile-an-hour signs, obviously we wouldn't have to replace.
Question. If we do write tickets and someone goes to court, they say there are no posted speed limits on the street.
That's why we need to post it at the road, the city limits coming into town on the primary artery. According to
I'd
what
like
they-
to ask council about that.
Let's go to North Carolina.
Are we getting ready to open a can of worms here?
That would be, John, that would be something that would be easy enough to determine. That we could determine quick enough if that would be enough coverage.
I just don't see, I think if I were a visitor here and I got caught exceeding and I got a ticket, I go to court and I can say, Your Honor, I found no signs at all telling me what the speed limit was. Well, how'd you come in?
Yeah, really.
Well, I came in a back way and there was no sign.
They're so widespread though, my gut is,
gut reaction is they're enforcing it. I mean,
If it's not posted,
if a general posting like Sam's talking about.
There's a lot of
If the
towns do
city
it.
limits coming into town.
And there's nothing that would also prevent you at a good spot, central somewhere, putting it up again in town. And this, you know, you don't have to just be at the entryways. If there was another location that just made sense.
You can't expect to be a speed limit sign every time you turn off of a side road onto a speed limit sign. Now, the state of North Carolina tells you that when you enter the state of North Carolina, unless otherwise posted 55 miles an hour, we do that as we enter the city limits and all the major arteries.
Well, truthfully, we don't really have that many entrances into town. There aren't really, I guess, what you classify as the primary entrance. I don't think the expense would be huge to make sure we saturate posting.
what kind of money are we talking about to come up with this ordinance? Could come back to home.
You know how much savings you're talking
Yeah,
about?
what kind of savings are we talking about?
The average one of those reflectorized mileage signs that conform to state standard run about $62 each. And we figured already we're going to have somewhere close to 50 to put them back on the markets where they currently are by our inventory. So, you know, that's a considerable savings off the expense that we'd have to have. We'd obviously be creating and posting new signs at the city limits as you come into town.
And removing the old ones.
Yeah. Keep pulling them out.
What did Chief Adams say?
Well, when I talked to him about it, and I thought he agreed with it, when I talked to him about it, he said that in his experience that rationalizing the speed limits actually makes traffic enforcement easy.
Rationalize.
Where you have basically the only differences are your posted exceptions.
Just assume it's 20 unless they see different.
In this case, 35.
35.
So what would be the next, we brought it up for first discussion here. What
Well,
would be
if the board's interested in looking at it further, what I recommend is that you charge the streets committee to do an in-depth look at, and, well, like Bob brought up a point, council had a point, to look at specifications, to make sure we're covering all the waterfront with it, but it's,
Would it be streets or police? I mean, it's not a beautification issue, it's a monetary, but it's more of a police issue to me than it would be streets.
there's some of both.
Yeah, it's some of both.
Because streets does more than do time.
Well, we could ask both committees to look at it from their respective points of view.
I just really, hope Adams would be, I'd expect he would,
We've been talking about something else that, I got the other item, and that has to do with some of our intersections.
Well, I don't sense refusal to study a little bit more, since the board's willing to.
I think sometimes the speed limit was, it's just really kind of faulty roads. When they go by, you're like, wow.
I'd rather see us spend that money on radar guns. Yeah, I mean, write enough tickets, we can pay for them.
Is that sign broken that we used to have?
Oh,
When you're
yeah.
close to, is it long gone?
It's long gone.
It's
In
long.
fact, the smoking ruins of it is posted in islands.
Oh, is it?
The only
Okay.
thing left is the trailer.
Because it's kind of like when you
Okay.
see it.
All right.
freeze.
The other item I wanted to, and I gave everybody a copy of the section of the town street map. Look particularly, if you will, where the traffic circle in front of the Chamber of Commerce is slated to go. And then once you find that point, move south as you would come out to the town limits. The reason for this is looking at these intersections. I talked for a while with the project on this when Terry Bradley was here. And then again, I talked with David about these street intersections. In terms of ease of access onto the main road, it is a mixed bag at best. There are times during the day when between the Chamber of Commerce and the city limit where the road splits into the 4-lane, where literally folks cannot get onto the highway, the main road, from any one of these side roads.
From Walnut or Maple or Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Edgewood / Hillcrest.
Right.
We've looked at that in terms of seeing if there were some measures that we could take that weren't profound, like putting in turning lanes and all that other sort of stuff, because we literally do not have sufficient highway to live on the town streets including stuff. We tried one at where Maple comes into the Georgia Road. Terry looked at it first, and then we followed up on it by removing the stop sign for right-hand turns to turn it into a yield, which in theory should make melding simpler.
Yeah.
But in actuality, as we measured the experiment, it really didn't make that much difference in terms of getting traffic out, because most people had to stop anyway, given the volume of traffic coming out from in front of the chamber and the senior center. So we're probably just going to go ahead and restore the stop sign up there. Because fundamentally there isn't any difference, and it's complicated. That street enters at an oblique, an odd angle, and there's really not room enough in there for marking out a left-hand turn. And the practicality of the left-hand turn, as you all know, is pretty slim there anyway, especially during the summer. Well, what brought all this up in terms of priority to look at it is, in fact, we have gotten the traffic circle on the transportation improvement plan. What we don't have on the transportation improvement plan is working with the state to take care of that zone between where the traffic circle would be and the city limits on the Georgia Road. And in fact, congestion, ease of people getting in and out of the feeder streets and the thing are not going to be eased that much by a traffic circle, because the volume of traffic is the determining factor there as to whether or not people can get on and off, say, at Womack Street. What we need to do is to make an addendum to the transportation improvement plan project for the traffic circle to get the DOT to take a planning posture on that section of road as well, about looking at improvements taken in conjunction with the traffic circle.
It was on the radar to go to Walnut Street.
That Street needs traffic.
It was been talked around the committees and stuff to get it up to Walnut Street anyway.
The golf course too has become, that's as busy it's getting as busy as Walnut Street, because they go through Promenade.
To go to school.
Yeah, they go through that way and then get over there and take a shortcut, so they don't get stuck in that traffic.
Every one of those feeder streets from Maple all the way on down to the town limits is flawed and has problems. Including Wilson, because you have to come up to get onto the road, and just to make sure that I don't have to pull
Yeah,
out.
one of them, even down in another place, where you turn in.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not gonna turn left.
No.
You gotta come up Hillcrest down by your house, hit the red light, and
And
go all the way back
then-
around.
All those feeder streets are hard out
Well,
there.
and Hillcrest itself, where it comes into Edgewood, is improperly placed, because it comes right in
Oh, yeah,
at the
that's
intersection.
what they.
And on the other hand, we're trying our best to keep them off the bypass and come through town.
Irony of irony.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And that's not bad, it's just.
But basically, the project that I would look at putting in, and I think the same rule would apply that you brought up before, Joe, that really the police and streets committees need to look at. is to be able to come up with an evaluation on that the board can rally behind and then adopt forward to the state to add to the TIP in conjunction with the traffic circle. Because it's going to be expensive. There'll have to be a minimum some turning actions, maybe even a traffic, at least one traffic.
Okay, no action on this tonight. Just briefing discussion.
Unless you're needing something from us.
Well, I think the board's comfortable with it, the two committees can start working.
I think we should definitely do this at the same time we talk about it. All right, advocacy items to the League of Municipalities.
If you look at the attachment on the Utilities Commission Advocacy Survey, what the League of Municipalities is searching for is just degree of interest from the municipalities in North Carolina about forming a lobbying organization to set in place when utility systems, i.e. seek rate increases. The thing that the towns don't have now, other than the electric cities, is a collective means for lobbying or advocating, if you will, with companies in front of the utility commission, where most of the input is given that municipalities get involved in, is in the regional hearings or the local hearings that are put on by relevant utilities as part of their public review process for rate increases. This would give the League of Municipalities quite a bit more punch in terms of advocating for public users of utilities, especially power. Well, that's part of what they will evaluate. But right now, they're just wanting to know if the town of Franklin would be interested in looking at the details of an advocacy proposition.
I wouldn't.
I was gonna say, what would be the negative on it? Not as part of
I don't
advocacy.
see any downside to the town, at least from looking at it.
And as you'll all recall from our experience with Duke Energy and the build for them, it's hard to string together any kind of significant challenge that anything we want to do. It's really got to almost be a statewide banding together of municipalities.
And essentially engaging in lobbying.
Right, that's what I said.
That's the key thing about it.
Yeah.
The professionals that know the ropes to pull and how to pull it. Yeah, and it costs. But of course, so does a 5 to 10% rate increase per year for the amount, the power that we use, say, for streetlights.
So, what action do we need on that?
I think if the board is interested in proceeding with that, motion to authorize it, fine, then we'll go ahead and send into the League of Municipalities and take in the workup study just to see what the details.
I make a motion.
All right.
I say,
Discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Now that we've got through with our traffic matters and stuff, our chief shows up. We were talking about you. We ain't going backwards up. We'll catch you later. Too much on the agenda.
Are you seeing something behind there?
Draft of drug and alcohol policy, alcohol and draft. Now, growing up there, not the same time there.
Ashley Hyder and I have been working for some time to produce the draft alcohol and drug policy that's before you. And I can tell you, at least for my part, that drugs and alcohol are far from my mind sometimes when I was drafting this thing. There are several really good reasons to adopt a policy like this. I think chief of those being that it's just good government to provide the services that you provide to your citizens safely as you can.
and also to provide your employees with a drug-free workplace. And those are the two purposes that are stated in the very first section of that policy. Another really good reason is that you've adopted a personnel policy that presumes that you will put in place a drug and alcohol policy. It's referred to several times, and so if anything, it's really sort of overdue. Another reason is that it's been strongly recommended by the town's insurer that, particularly in the case of a traffic accident involving a town employee in a town vehicle, you have to have some policy that allows you to test them afterward so that we can all determine how much liability we've got. So the policy it primarily operates in four different circumstances. The first is, and all of these have been very thoroughly vetted by the courts, you have to balance any testing of this nature when you're a government actor like the town, because it is a search. It is a Fourth Amendment search and seizures sort of a situation. You have to ensure that the searches you do are reasonable and advancing an important interest like safety of provision service. So the first situation it would operate in is that when all new employees are given what will be a conditional offer of employment, it will be conditioned on their passing a drug screening. It operates for all employees at all times when there is reason to suspect. And let me be clear on that point. We're going to do, and one of the reasons I wanted to actually be here tonight is to help me answer any questions you might have about implementation of this. I don't think there's any trickier part of implementation than the suspicion-based testing. You have to be very careful, and I think we're going to instruct our department heads and supervisors that we're talking about a very bright line of suspicion. Falling down drunk is the sort of situation we would call for suspicion-based testing. The policy also declares several categories of positions that the town has as safety sensitive. This is also a very common feature of the drug and alcohol policy that particularly your sworn officers or other emergency personnel and employees such as wastewater and water treatment that have a direct impact and the possibility of any kind of mistake leading directly to irreparable harm. Then there's the post-accident testing I was telling you about, and also in the case of return to work. There is provision in this draft policy for treatment of employees, particularly ones who are upfront about problems that they have, allows for them to go get treatment and then to return to work, but with the modification that they're going to submit to some random testing. So that's the basic gist of the policy and the reasons for it. Like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about it, and I've asked Ashley to help me flesh out the idea of how we want to implement it.
This isn't full policy. I mean, most all towns, especially larger, have these policies, right?
I adapted this from a couple of different policies that I found that were good. The city of Wilmington and the town of Wilson had particularly good, well-drafted policies. They borrowed some.
Does the league not have a model on something like this?
Not that I found.
Because it would be hard not to have.
Well, it's so, it fits into the spaces that the case law tells us it's permissible to test. It's kind of narrowly tailored around that. So, for instance, you can't go and test people before you even offer them employment. And this comes straight out of case law. But you can offer them a conditional offer of employment that as long as they pass a test, and they'll be employed. The testing is only suspicion-based after that, except in the case of your safety-sensitive positions like emergency personnel, sworn officers, and so forth.
Who's entitled to have the suspicion?
Department heads are required, they're required to review there's a set list of, well, it's not a set list, but there's a list of suggested criteria, the sort of thing we're talking about. One of the things that Ash and I have been talking about is making clear that she's to be involved unless it's just the most emergent sort of situation, that she is to have a hand in whether or not a suspicion-based test is ever administered. It can be taken a step further. Some policies require that the only individuals that can identify a suspicion are trained in identification of those things. That's not, I mean, the sort of scheme that we have here for suspicion basis has withstood case law review. Yes, sir.
I really don't have a long problem with this, but what I do have a problem with is suspicion based. It is so subjective. I think what I might suspect with someone might not be what somebody else suspects. And I don't know if I wouldn't rather have something like reasonable suspicion rather than just, I can suspect anybody's doing anything, but do I have the knowledge to actually clarify what my suspicions are? And I articulate why I'm suspicious this person is.
But that's required. I mean, because they're required to, the supervisor, it spells out reasonable suspicion as a set of specific and articulable facts. If that doesn't tell you, it comes from a judge somewhere. That's definitely not something anybody says on a daily basis, but it spelled out reasonable suspicion as a set of specific and articulable facts that taken together with reasonable inferences. I mean, it is a standard of reasonableness.
But the problem I would have that would be the possibility of bias getting into it. If you have an employee department head that likes something, right? Could there be a bias in this?
That absolutely is something we'll have to be on the lookout for. Yes, it's one of the reasons that the human resources officer is meant to be involved in any decision making as well.
I'm just getting a little concerned here about the Fourth Amendment rights here. For the invasion of a person's privacy, I want to avoid that if we possibly can. And I also was a little bit concerned about over-the-counter use of drugs.
Are you talking, when you're talking about this, are you talking about nicotine, how are you talking about the drug testing behind?
There is pre-employment drug testing that is suspicionless. Everybody does it.
Everybody does.
That's not.
There is, for certain safety sensitive positions, like sworn officers and things like that, there is random suspicionless, just sort of chosen at random by process. That's another thing that Ashley and I've been talking about how to do in practice, that not hand-picked in any means way to do that. But this, I have to stress though that I understand your concerns, but these sorts of policies and with this very wording have been implemented successfully in lots of municipalities across the country. This is not
And I realize, I think we should probably come up with a computer program that could randomly select.
would be something along those lines.
That's already there's already a computer program for it.
Yes.
I'll just tell you where the rubber's gonna meet the road, if it could, is if it's an O2. One of those boys showing up in the morning after a rough night would be O2. And then it says dismissal. It doesn't say you go to get sent home for the day. And I'm not pointing any fingers or anything like that, but O2 is just so low.
Well, doesn't say though that you suspicion somebody that.
I do think that there's some room for discretion on the part of the HR director.
You can't talk.
I mean, the policy is not going to jump up and fire anything. You know, the policy is just words on paper. It's got to be.
But if it says, O2, and it says it shall be dismissed, that's not discretionary, at least not the way I read it written right now. Well, it may be, that's what.
And that's what he was saying.
If they ask, they have to request that.
Any place that, we're going for this kind of deployment, expect. Yeah, it's in place pretty much everywhere, anymore.
And the .02 number is, I mean, that's the discretion. I found that in some policies, but it's at the
You
discretion.
want to take it up to 3?
I don't know, but we're not gonna, I mean, this is work in progress.
Sure it is, yeah.
It's different if they drive a truck, there's DOT requirements on that.
Yeah, they're driving the truck through the elbow. Yeah, well,
There's RA requirements on that.
I have another question here. You agreed to a sample or specimen of urine, blood, breath, saliva, hair, or other samples or specimens. When you're getting into an area there which is been before the courts about requiring a search warrant. When you get invasiveness, a blood sample, if I don't want to voluntarily give you a blood sample,
That very language, and like I say, practically every word in this thing has been subject to challenge and has been upheld, including the ability to take samples in a variety of means.
unless there's some kind of extra circumstance, can you take my blood without a search warrant?
Depends, what's your position? Are you
I'm an employee of the town.
Okay, what kind of employee? Are you a sworn officer, or are you just coming on as an
I'm a volunteer fireman.
Volunteer firemen are not, strictly speaking, town employees.
Okay, what about I'm a captain on the fire department, but I'm still a volunteer?
If you're an employee, you'd be subject to this policy.
But didn't we decide that all volunteer firemen are basically employees because they get paid? And we provide workman's comp?
They might be for tax purposes. I don't think they're covered by this. They're not covered by this policy.
Well, the town board is. We're
The town
considered
board is
employees.
not covered by this policy, correct?
this isn't intended to be the real finished part, this is a draft.
I'm a hush.
No, I mean,
I mean, actually, you could speak to the need to have this in place at a particular time, but I mean, it's been 3 years since
Yeah.
the personnel policy was adopted.
That's the biggest concern, is that we have a personnel policy in place that states that we're a drug-free workplace, and that we have a policy out there that all employees are signed. But that's non-existent. And secondly, our insurance agency, the underwriters are also concerned because of past incidents that have happened, where there has been, many years ago, an employee with a DUI. Well, there's no policy in place to protect us from those things. My biggest concern right now is the liability of not having a policy out there. If something were to happen, what grounds do we have to stand on? So it's something that, yes, I guess it is a draft, but hoping to move forward on more so tonight. There may be some things that we need to revisit, maybe the blood alcohol content level, maybe those are things that we need to up, but as far as the randomness and post-accident drug screenings, that's something that we really need to implement very soon, hopefully.
and you know, it says, basically, if you fail the test, you shall be dismissed. That's something that we want to make sure that's what we want, because it's not, it doesn't seem to have discretionary, don't seem to be any discretion there.
Well, and we absolutely can soften that to may result in dismissal.
And that would be better for protection.
Maybe, but then all of a sudden, then that opens the door for a whole lot of,
We need something in place, though.
I don't doubt it, but this is the first time we've had this chance, and we've been incorporated for 100 years. We don't need to just to make any real decisions tonight, I can tell you that.
It's been talked about, in and out. We want to get into the 21st century.
There's plenty of time for that.
Actually, how would you go about taking a blood sample from the employee?
Basically, we have it set up currently with the health department to do all of our drug screening, so they have a medical review doctor that reviews all of any type of labs that come in. So they're sent there. I think typically they're just doing urinalysis right now. For DOT standards testing, they may do other types of tests, but they handle all that. We have chain of custody consent forms that are sent within. It's very, can't think of the word, but as far as HIPAA and, privacy type things, we're completely covered. The records are maintained in my office under lock and key behind this locked door. So there is a privacy factor involved.
Pulling hair and taking blood samples
I think in this instance, Sean's just,
with only reasonable, without reasonable suspicion, just, what was the wording again?
I'd have a problem with the hair.
Yeah, you will.
well, I think those are all just listed in there for any forms of testing purposes, but typically it's just a urine test as of right now.
Suspicion based. Suspicion based. I just,
You know, a lot of high school athletes need.
and I'm not saying I approve or disapprove of that, I just don't know. I've been through this drug testing before, but nobody took hair or blood, anything of that nature.
Now, what would you like us to do, put a motion or?
Well, it's a
What do
board's-
you want us to do? What do you think we should do?
If the board is not comfortable with it, and I also would emphasize it's a policy that whenever you do adopt, it needs to be by resolution and not ordinance, just like the rest of the personnel policy. This doesn't create, so it does not create any kind of a contractual obligation for the town. It's subject to change at the discretion of the board, just like the rest of the personnel policy. So, I mean, it can be in place and also be a living, changeable document. As I say, I think all of these policies have been challenged in one way or another and have been upheld in other locations. So on that basis, I think you could put it in place tonight by resolution, and it would be legal and sufficient and helpful in terms of the personnel policy. I mean, if not, I certainly can make an adjustment or two with Ashley's help and bring another version back to the board.
I think that we ought to have at least a period of time where any member wants to get with you, Ashley, or both, just to bounce off things and then come back with some options and maybe be in position in our next meeting to take something.
That's fine too. I want the board to be comfortable.
I think we all have time to go through and read it. I'd like to look at it against other policies. I've been involved with it. It looks like it's much restricted. I'd like to look at that. I'd like to just look at it.
The two things I have a concern with, this form that's in the packet here is the blood and hair. I really believe that is just some kind of reasonable suspicion there. That's the concern I have.
You're entitled to that opinion, but no court's ever said that.
I think that there has been an issue.
That'd be something that we can.
I don't think it's been necessarily in relation to a personnel policy, but it certainly has in law enforcement. That it has been an issue, and it still is an issue before the courts right now about whether it's a Fourth Amendment violation, because it is an invasive procedure. I don't know if any of the laws.
Berlin's obvious limitations notwithstanding, hair to me is not anywhere anything like blood. Me personally, but that's not, we're not gonna get there tonight. But are we gonna hold this open, have it, for this meeting, and between now and the November meeting, we could have a chance to speak with Ashley and or John? Okay. Well, we're getting the end, you missed something.
Yeah, I got it. Gee.
Anybody got anything on the mind?
Mayor, I would like to make either bring a motion tonight or whatever. I would like to see the town of Franklin, I understand they used to do it. I would like to see them come out and anybody who calls, help people clear limbs and stuff out of their yards. I would like to see the town of Franklin be active in cleaning, helping some of these people clear up their, I know we're not gonna clean leaves, I know, but there's a lot of times you're seeing limbs and different things on property. I think our town deserves it, but we're paid both county and city taxes, you know, city taxes should count for something.
You'd like for the website and the local newspaper, the
Absolutely.
media to have.
Advertise a day, you know, maybe the end of October even, after leaves.
We do do it. We get, they.
But I've never seen it in the paper, I never was
That's what
aware
she's
of
saying,
it.
it really needs, she's right, it needs to be.
And this is the time of the year.
Yeah,
You can
it
do
needs
it
to
twice,
be.
is it twice a year you can do it?
Whatever it is, just
I've lived in
advertise what the
town 30
policy
years and
is.
never knew they did it.
When I play it, what it is, and I'm just, Joe Gibson to do something on the or something. Basically, if the property owner will take the brush down to the edge of the road, put it in a pile, and then call the town, through the public works department. At some point in time, within a couple of 3 days.
Some kind of procedure, yeah.
If that's in the newspapers and maybe on the,
But basically, it's not as much as you can haul down there, it's like one pickup load, full.
well, it's a limit,
Yeah, within reason, sure.
Right.
And it's one time, and at one time. a year.
Whatever it is, you're saying get the word out, is that what you're
Get the word
saying?
out, let people know we're
Yeah.
willing to help them.
Yeah.
Okay, that's gonna take a vote.
They do pick up leaves, don't they? If they're bag, don't they do that? Well, they're not gonna rake them up themselves. They gotta get some type of-
We don't have a supper, we don't
I
have.
don't think, people don't know that up there.
And again, it's never.
Well, it's just gonna, you're gonna have to do a little story on it.
But
You need to do a little, some type
we are.
of release, some type of press release, yeah.
Well, I would recommend we get with Jay to make sure that the way he takes out equipment, set it up.
Right.
So in the past, we've not had a place to put them after we picked up the leaves, and that was part of the major problem that we had. So we need to, before we start talking about leaves, we need to talk to Jay. Now, this other, we do that, and we'll take care of that. We always have, always will, about the rims and stuff like that.
But I agree with Joyce that gets by people don't realize it, and it's a service that we need to make equally available to all.